Welcome to a football show Thursday edition, preseason game number 1 edition. That is Zach Lyons. I am Braden Gall, and you can get to me on twitter.com, x.com, whatever you want to call it. You can get to me there at Braden Gall.
You can get to me at Twitter. Well, I don't know what we're doing. You can get to me at Twitter at FWordsPod.
I'm audibling at the line.
We fumbled that just as much as Malik Willis fumbled his snap today at preseason practice.
What's funny is Will Levis actually fumbled the first snap of team drills, but then picked it up and tossed it to Tajay Spears, who turned it into a 35-yard touchdown run. So who knows if he would have actually gotten there? Who knows if they would have tackled him or not? But thank you guys all for joining us. Of course, if you'd like to jump into the comment section, please do so on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you watch us. Please share the product, thumbs up. Spread the word. Let more folks get involved because we got a lot to discuss. I had a chance to watch both practices the last 2 days. I had to dip out a little early today. I'll tell you why in just a little bit. Excited about some other stuff going on, but please come on and share the product. And all you guys with questions and comments, jump on in. We got a preseason football game coming up. All of today's show brought to you by Sinkers Beverages over in East Nashville, their sister store. Bluegrass Beverages, proud sponsor of football and other F words. Up in Hendersonville, both places, excellent places to get your booze or non-alcoholic beverages or other items of choice that help you relax on any given day, that pair nicely with dinner or a football game perhaps on Saturday evening. And if you get yourself into trouble Saturday evening because the offense isn't offensing and you need to get more beverages and you really shouldn't be getting in a car, you should search Uber Eats for Sinkers Beverages, Zach.
Hey, they drive so you can drink.
Have more booze delivered right to your Titans watch party. There you go. And by the way, parking, not going to be fun this weekend. we'll see.
Parking, it's never fun any weekend in Nashville, but especially for Titans games for the next 18 weeks.
Driving a car, 3 years really. Driving a car in Nashville, also not particularly fun at any given point. So lots of stuff to discuss today because the offense.
So are we actively just saying, don't go to the games?
No, I don't want to. Here's what I would say. Don't go to the Packers game. And if you'd like to sell me 11 to 12 tickets, please do so.
There you go. Hey, that sounds like someone can make some big money off of you right there.
There you go. I am pot committed, as they say, with 2 children and brothers and a mother that all need tickets. So I'm pot committed. No, it's going to be a fun show today because we're going to hear from Dylan Radunz, by the way. Had a chance to chat with him after practice on Wednesday. It was the first time he was talking with us since Sadiq Charles retired, kind of, I would say, pretty clearly out of the blue, according to the Titans folks. Brian Callahan alluded to the fact he couldn't say it directly, but he basically said this, we didn't expect this, but that Dylan Radunz had already sort of drawn even with him in the competition. So he has now had some comments.
Which is total bullshit, by the way, because, I mean, Sadiq Charles, when he was there, got all the reps.
There you go.
I mean, when Sadiq left, then Dylan Radunz got all the reps. And then after Sadiq left permanently, Radunz split time with Andrew Rupsich. So what does that tell you about Dylan Radunz?
Yeah, I don't think it's as 50-50 as Brian Callahan was making it out to be, but yeah. I do think Charles was out of the lineup a couple of times in team drills with the ones, more than I think not a lot, but a couple of times. So I would say, unless there was a bunch of stuff happening that we didn't see, which is possible, I suppose. I got a chance to see kickoff coverage for the first time. I know they've done that a few times in practice, but it's the first time I've gotten to see it. I'm fascinated by that. There's a lot of stuff to look forward to in the Niners game. The offense is going to be, I'm going to talk to Vondre Sweat. Did a great interview today at the press conference. Was very open. I thought he's been largely unblockable over the last 2 days of practice. 1-on-1, 2-on-2, team drills, you name it. And the quarterbacks drawing the ire of their coaching staff on Thursday for sure. And that's sort of where we got to start, is in general, the offense. And if you want to, Zach, sort of package this with questions you have and things you are looking forward to against San Francisco on Saturday, I think that's sort of the right way to frame this, because up until this point, Levis had one of the best throws of camp on Wednesday, but I don't think a very productive week or 3 weeks for the Titans offense so far.
Well, that's what it sounds like. The only connection that it seems to be unstoppable is the Mason Rudolph to any wide receiver connection so far. I mean, like Kyle Phillips, Mason Kinsey, it doesn't matter. Those two guys are apparently just that trio is just a triforce of power for the Tennessee Titans. It seems unstoppable. But that's second string. Those are guys that probably aren't going to see the field very much. And, I'm not concerned, I guess, because this right side of the offensive line has just been a rotational mess. And I had someone ask me today, is JC Latham doing bad? Is he doing good? I go, I think everybody's just focused on the right side of the line because the left side is handling itself pretty well. And I think at the end of the day, these are the growing pains that everybody's going to have to get used to for maybe the first few weeks. Doesn't mean they can't be productive. Doesn't mean they can't win games. Doesn't mean they can't score touchdowns. But I don't think that I think that right now what we're seeing is that the offense is just growing up and molding and gelling before our eyes, and we just have to be patient with it. There's obviously certain limitations to that patience, but at the end of the day, we have to see when the lights come on. In the first two series, of which he says they're going to play 1 or 2 series, probably won't show us a lot. But we were talking on Football and Other F Words, guys like Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, Dylan Radunz, those guys will probably see a lot of action, we would assume, because they are filling in new positions. Even though Dylan Radunz has been playing that position all camp, him and Andrew Rupsich are now in a competition. And then so they'll probably rotate in and out, similar to Malik Willis and Mason Rudolph will. And I think Nicholas Petit-Ferrer will probably see the most action out of the most consistent, I guess, in a row action, I would say. I just kind of look at it and I go, this is to be expected, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's major concerns from the fan base or from analysts that are there because of what you all saw last year.
Yeah.
So, I understand everybody's concern, or maybe, and I'm not saying you're freaking out, but people were to freak out. I totally understand it. I'm just not there yet.
Are we suggesting that Andrew perhaps is freaking out? Titans may get first overall pick. Ed, this is the question here, and I think this is the interesting part, because I do want to talk offensive line, but I'm going to wait and sort of let Dylan Radunz set that up for us. According to Jim Wyatt, Levis is completing over 70% of his passes. So what are we worried about? Smiley face. So the very first team drill on Wednesday is, I think, an example and maybe the microcosm of camp, which is that they went about a 15-yard out route to Ridley on the first play. Levis throws an absolute BB. Ridley drags his 2 feet. Just a great throw and catch. Then he completes another pass, I think, to a back, like a short pass out of the back. Or no, it's to Wiley, I think. Got really good blocking, and he kind of finds his way down the sideline, picks up some yardage. Then Calvin Ridley makes one of the best catches I've ever seen in a practice. Down the left sideline, where they run a flea flicker where they hand it off to the traditional flea flicker where they hand it off to the running back turns around, passes it back to the quarterback takes a shot on a wheel route down the left sideline. Ridley was matched up against a safety, and so had a couple steps on him, but great recovery. I think it was Jackson, that got back and or no, maybe it was why am I drawing a blank on 28? Now I'm drawing a blank on who 28 is. Throws it Ridley makes a spectacular catch, diving around the guy. So Levis goes 3 for 3 is the point. He goes 3 for 3 to start. 2 great plays by Ridley, an excellent blocked, well-designed play to Josh Wiley, and then on the 4th play throws an interception over the middle. And that to me, that series is how I feel about camp so far from Will Levis in the passing game. Is the receiving core and the weapons are really intriguing. And Levis, when it's good, can do anything he wants to do. And then he just does something that's just, hey, you haven't played a full season, and sometimes you don't have the accuracy, and sometimes you don't make the right read, and it'll kill a drive. And so that's sort of what that was sort of setting the tone for today. Today they come in and their first, and I watched a lot of offense and defense during the lines of scrimmage on Wednesday morning. Today I wanted to watch red zone, the quarterbacks, and they threw against air. And none of the quarterbacks were throwing the ball particularly well. And at one point, Nick Holes, who's standing in the back line, is just like, wake the up, guys. What are y'all doing? We are completing 50% against air. And we all look at each other like, That's not good. And I've actually I'll probably post one of the videos, but there's one video I've got. I didn't realize that I captured it. Otherwise, I would have played it for you guys. But I went back and just saw it recently where it was Tyler Boyd and Chig with two different quarterbacks throwing two different passes, right? Because they run like one on the left and one on the right. And they both run sort of these routes. One goes into the goalpost. The other one kind of breaks out to the right. One throw was perfect right to Tyler Boyd, and the other throw was 5 yards over Chig's head. And I was just going, this is what it is. It's one good, one bad, one good, one bad, one good. And it's been so inconsistent. We can get to the different individuals and different players, but I think it is worth, no matter the quarterback, but in particular Will Levis, there needs to be a couple of plays of confidence in the game on Saturday. And it doesn't need to be great. It just needs to be some rhythm, because I don't think he's found it yet in camp.
Well, and to be honest, I mean, who's going to line up across from him, right? Like, okay, so we know DeAndre Hopkins is not playing, but he said starters, so we would assume that most of the starters on offense are playing. Nick Vannett is getting a day off for whatever reason. It's just kind of weird.
He's been blocking very hard.
It was a random vet throwing. It was like, well, Jeffrey Simmons and Nick Vannett, or neither of those guys will be playing on Saturday. Are those the same caliber of players? But so most of the offense is going to be playing.
I hope.
So you look across the way and you got to say, well, who are they playing against? Because if they're playing against their 50% second string, this offense should move. But if they're playing 100% or even 50% second string and they're not moving the ball very well, and they're having the same mistakes, or they're making the wrong decisions, then you got some issues. Now, I see in our saying here, like, I'm most excited for Saturdays to look at Callie as a play caller. There's been and that's
regardless of the quarterback. Like, you could see how well the scheme
right.
is, you know.
And Nick, well, you can't. That's what I'm about to say. Nick Fuck says, do you guys think the schemes are going to be different for this preseason game, or are they just going to run a basic offense and basic zone still, hoping they let us in a little? They're not going to let you in. Now, I think the defense will look different because it's a man defense. That's its base defense. But you're going to see your base offense and your base defense. And Callahan specifically said he's not really looking for them to go down the field or do this or that. You know, he's looking for everything pre-snap to be tight-lipped. Or buttoned up, like they getting no penalties, no delays of games, no offsides, jumping off sides, no anything like that. Getting the pre-snap reads right, everybody's getting to their spot, and nobody's struggling to no DeAndre Hopkins telling Traylon Burks where to line up. Like, those situations is what he's mainly focused on. So to me, it's just like, you can see all that stuff. And that's stuff we've talked about before on the show, is that is the preseason stuff. That's the stuff that Malik Willis struggled with last year. And we talked about it. And like, Malik Willis is clearly struggling. He's playing well, but the difference between Malik Willis and Will Levis was night and day coming in and out of the huddle. So that's stuff you can see. So to me, I look at this stuff and I'm like, that's what really matters right now. But I also I want to propose something to you. Maybe instead of completion percentages, you guys track 3 and outs in preseason.
Oh, in the games, or you mean in practice? In
these little drills. Because everybody's like, Ed Henry said, 70%, he's completed 70%. I think that was a little bit of a joke. But he's completed searching completion percentage. But maybe, 3 and outs. Well, this first drive, or this first down, second down, third down. Well, on third down, he threw the interception, so drive number 1's over. Because sometimes after the interception, they still let them play.
Yeah, and
so maybe that's the where you.
So guys on Wednesday when that happened, he went completion, interception. That was the end of the first. That was the end of the first team. Then the second team came out and started. Today they did their first drive, and Levis actually held the football on the third down. It was about 3rd and 6 or something. And he kind of cuts back in and dives forward. And I was like, I looked over at the guy standing next to me. I said, y'all don't want him to do that normally, right? And he goes, well, I think he was diving for the sticks. And I was like, okay, that's simulating a game play. That's fine. I'm okay with that. The defense obviously let him go. They're not going to hit him there. And then they kick a field goal. So even they got the first down, but they kicked the field goal anyway to try to simulate sort of, it's 4th and 6 now. Because I think what they were assuming was he really probably wouldn't have gotten out. So I do think you're right that there's some. So to your point about who's it against and the situation, the best throw of the camp, and I tweeted this yesterday, the best throw of the camp was in team on Wednesday where Levis steps back. And like I said, Simmons and Sweat have largely been unblockable in general. And a couple other players we could talk about that were very tough to block as well.
Which, by the way, they're supposed to be unblockable.
Yes.
Like, I think that's what we kind of lose. Not every team the Tennessee Titans are going to face are going to have a Jeffrey Simmons, a Tavondre Sweat, and a Harold Landry all at the same time. Like, those are your supposed to be. And I know I'm putting Tavondre Sweat in rarefied air right now when he does not deserve it, but his upside is he was supposed to, when he was drafted, the idea that is him, Jeffrey Simmons are going to be pick your poison, unstoppable. And that's going to be trouble for anybody, and let alone just having Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons at the same time, because most teams only have a Jeffrey Simmons or a Harold Landry. Very rare do they have both of players of their caliber.
And honestly, the truth of the matter is, like,
and the corners,
you draft Sweat for a lot of reasons, but if one of them is to get Jeffrey Simmons in one-on-one situations more often, that's very clearly part of the goal. So what happens is Simmons gets doubled on this pass play, and Skoronski goes one-on-one with Sweat, and Sweat is pushing him into Levis's kitchen. And but he holds his ground. He keeps his body in front of him just enough to let Will Levis get the throw off, which is like a 40 or 50 yard through the air deep shot down the right sideline, which Brian Callahan had told us in a private media session that morning. He had said, we put together a super cuts of tape of CeeDee Lamb and Anquan Bolden and Marvin Jones and Demaryius Thomas and all these guys. Like, we are studying deep shots. We're studying the go ball to help Will Levis sort of where to place it, where to put it, when to throw it, how to throw it.
Some of those are very interesting names to use for the deep ball.
Yeah, Bolden in particular, but Emmanuel Sanders was in there. Some of it's, I think, the names that he was from. He was coaching Peyton with Demaryius Thomas or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Jamar Chase was in that group as well. So this was very interesting to me that he takes this big deep shot, throws a perfect pass with Sweat bearing down on him, and connects with Ridley for like a 60-yard gain. The context of that play is that it's against Trey Avery. So, like, it's one thing to do it again, and that's not meant to be insulting to Trey Avery, but it's a really good play. But the reason he's 6 yards wide open, giving him a bigger window and an easier throw, is because it's Trey Avery guarding Calvin Ridley and not L'Jarius Sneed.
Well, there's also a difference between, like, for San Francisco purposes, doing that play against Trey Avery versus Diamador Lenore. Like, they're one of their top corners. I mean, if you're doing that against Ambry Thomas, that's about doing the same thing against Trey Avery. So if you're lined up against Ambry Thomas across the way, you need to be making that play. You know, it's a little bit more forgiving if it's against, Lenore, but at some point you're going to have to make those plays against a Lenore type cornerback.
Yeah, you're going to play Sauce Gardner this year. You're going to have to make those throws. So
this is a very good defense, and I know that we talk about the depth, but we were talking about it yesterday on Football and Other F Words on Wednesday. Is like, with the addition of Quandre Diggs, the top 14 or 15 of this defense is really freaking good, and the only inside linebacker that is included in that top 14 is Kenneth Murray. Like, there's going to be a possibility that we see one inside linebacker sets because the rest of the team is just so much better than, no offense, but then Jack Gibbons, Cedric Gray, James Williams, and all these other guys. So, like, to me, I'm thinking, this is a really good defense, but then again, we all thought that about last year, but this year the names are actually proven. Right? I mean, like, these are all kind of, for the most part, proven guys besides Tavondre Sweat and really Kenneth Murray, even though Kenneth Murray has just been phenomenal all camp. But these are really proven guys. So I'm willing to, like I said, be patient. And I think you are too. Yeah. But I do think there are people that will not be willing to be patient. And I would just urge patience from the start. And I would also urge not drafting any Titans players in fantasy. Just wait a couple weeks and buy low on them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So here's the thing, and Easton and I talked about this on Monday. He had a line about, like, well, if his grandmother was out there as a non-football expert or whatever,
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
I
heard that.
couldn't tell the difference. And I disagree with him. I think it is very obvious which of the three is clearly the 33rd overall pick who has elite NFL upside. Like, I think it's very obvious which one is the starter. And I think Mason Rudolph's throws they're just slower. It's just less than. Everything about him is less than Will Levis. But he has been completing these like sort of smart decision-making routes, these under routes, these out routes, these crossing routes. Like, he's not taking a lot of shots. He's not forcing the issue. And he's had a pretty decent camp. The best throw of the entire camp was today. Mason Rudolph throws probably about a 25-yard deep route to the corner. Mace over three defensive players by inches. Like, all three guys, I've never seen this. All three guys go up with like one hand to try to knock it down, and it clears like six hands. I've never seen anything like it. And it lands, and Mason Kinsey catches it, and then he takes 3 steps in the back corner of the end zone, like kind of comes towards us. He gives Ben Arthur a huge high five, and he's like, "You like that? You like?" Mason Kinsey has been more confident in this camp since day one than I've ever seen him. And I think he is closer to making the roster than he's ever been. Stop me when you've heard this before. I think with the injury to Hopkins, there's a chance that they keep 2 of these slot guys, whether it's Kinsey, Phillips, or Jackson. And right now, Jackson is clearly the best of the third team players, but he's on the third team. And Kinsey and Phillips are clearly ahead of him.
Why would they keep an extra slot guy when DeAndre Hopkins is an outside guy?
Because I don't know. For like, Kiaris Jackson's dropped a lot of passes. I don't know who the other body is. That true, like who can help you in other phases of the game? Because I think they feel pretty comfortable with Ridley, Burks, and Boyd being their top 3. So the question is, who can help you on special teams? Who can help you in punt return or kick return? Who can help you in other places? And I think Kinsey's had the best camp of the 3. Jackson is open all the time, and Willis cannot either see him or connect with him. It's very frustrating.
He's too small. He's too short.
He's like, today he was wide open in the flats, and Willis just threw it like 4 yards over his head. Again, the quarterbacks have not been good. Rudolph's had a couple of very good throws. So I don't, the receiving core is going to be fascinating to watch. Like, Treylon Burks is a little bit, I don't want to say he's not skinnier, but the baby fat is gone, and he has got his jersey all tucked up all the time, showing it off. And if he gets right, man, it's like every other time we've ever talked about him. If he gets right, the guy is very good. so if he's going to figure it out, he'll be very difficult to stop. But I just have no idea if he's ever going to figure it out. Like, there's still like this tiny 10% of like finishing plays, staying on your feet, complete the catch. Like, there's just a little bit there that's not there yet, and just got to see it happen. And staying healthy, of course, just got to stay healthy. So,
well, I mean, I do think, speaking of the slot receivers, I do think it's interesting that Jaquan Jackson just he can't function with Malik Willis, and then in 1v1s he's getting manhandled. So it's just kind of like, it's kind of a messy situation. So I kind of think like maybe we'll get a better look in preseason when, certain guys are dropping off, from playing and stuff, and maybe he gets to play with Mason Rudolph a little bit more and stuff like that. But I thought it was interesting today that Kyle Phillips is, talking about his clean slate with the punt returns and kick returns, and that he can help, and that he's, he didn't say it, but I know it, that he's actually being coached now on special teams, because they didn't have a coach there. So I will say this, I don't put much into the depth chart or anything, but if you're talking about guys that have put tape on and put it on the field in NFL actual games, the only problem with Kyle Phillips as a receiver has been health. Now, if he has to be a receiver and a kick returner, then, maybe he struggles there. But now that maybe he's being coached, maybe we will see him get his chance. Because obviously we're going to see Mason Kinsey first. I think Kiaris Jackson was after him on the depth chart. And then Kyle Phillips is how it's going to go. So possibly, you'll see those 3 guys kick return or punt return this week, and then next week you'll see another 3 guys, or maybe we'll have some more clarity. They had like 9 guys trying to return punts.
Traylon Burks on kick return. Traylon Burks.
Yeah, so we'll see, but Kyle Phillips specifically mentioned kick returns, not just punt returns. So if you were putting a gun to my head and saying, hey, this DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be ready. Of course, they would have to put him on the PUP list. And really, I don't see why you would need 6 wide receivers on game day without DeAndre Hopkins. You could just roll with 5 and then, whatever.
Probably.
I still don't find a path that this is very plausible. But if there were 2 slot guys coming behind Tyler Boyd, I would say it'd be Kyle Phillips. And I think that based on what you just said, if Jaquan Jackson isn't getting open a lot, he's getting open a lot in drills and he's just getting missed. I think you would get Jaquan Jackson because you drafted him and you have no real ties to Mason Kinsey, and Mason Kinsey just goes on the practice squad like he always does.
I personally lean Jackson, but Kinsey has been ahead of him every step of the way in camp, like in every team drill and every
better quarterback.
So there's no question about that. So I just think he's had
that good for him tour by Malik Willis that lasted for 3 days. Yeah, and that was quite a ride.
Ultimately, the quarterbacks, and we can wrap this up and move on to the offensive line here, because I watched a lot of that on Wednesday in like 2v2 drills, and there's some really bad stuff and some really good stuff in that drill. And we'll hear from Dylan Radunz coming up in just a second. Sinkers Beverages, of course, make sure you go check out Sinkers Beverages. If you're on game day and you need some libations, make sure you check them out. You can search Uber Eats and get them to send you the booze directly to your house. Zach?
Hey, they drive so you can drink.
That's right. Congratulations to Easton Freeze, by the way, on becoming a father. That's right. We already got some commentary there. I believe they're still giving away a ticket to the game. But you have to register, of course, to win on a Hot Read podcast today. I believe that is Thursday afternoon. They will give that away. So make sure you register. There's a link in our show notes, in the podcast show notes, and in their show notes to answer a few questions for us. Try to get to know you guys, the audience, a little bit better, what topics you like, when you listen to the show, where you listen to the show, how you listen to the show. The better we know you guys, the better we can kind of cater the content to what you guys want. So if you could take a couple of minutes, it takes like 4 minutes, answer a few questions for us. It is linked in the podcast notes, the YouTube show notes. It's on the Twitter bio. It's everywhere. So it's on the Hot Read podcast as well. And I think you have to fill that out to be eligible to win that ticket for the game this weekend. So go check that out.
The good news is that Easton will spend most of the time in the press box, and you just get to hang out with JT. So that's
you don't have to talk to Easton at all. It's great.
He told me that he'd be willing, if they didn't, that person who won the ticket did not want to sit next to him, they'd be willing to stay in the press box the entire time.
I think it's more of an indictment on JT.
Stand-up guy.
I think it's more of an indictment on JT, like not being willing to give away both tickets. Like I think it's a JT problem.
Yeah.
No, go. It's awesome that they got one of those. So go check it out. You can go watch Titans game with JT and not Easton on on Saturday. Anyway, quarterbacks, play calling, scheme, efficiency, rhythm, all that stuff. Going to be fun to watch. Offensive line is going to be very interesting. Now, there was a lot that I didn't like on Wednesday from the offensive line, but I think the group is still appreciably better than it was last year across the board, even after the Charles retirement. So we'll get into that in just a second, but I want you guys to hear Dylan Radunz. I first asked him a question about because Brian Callahan on Wednesday morning talked about how one-on-ones isn't really that important to him. It's about one of 5 working together, which is harder, but that's obviously what happens in a game. So that's why it's more important. And I had a chance to ask him about that. He also talked about Bill Callahan. He talked about focusing on guard. He talked about when he found out Charles retired and he's got an opportunity to start. So it's about 2 minutes here, not super long, but a lot of insight from Dylan Radunz. A couple of questions from reporters in there as well. The first one, of course, is me asking him about the chemistry of the unit, how there's so many different names, and how they are coming together so far in camp.
The chemistry, I think just a lot of new pieces. Obviously, J.C. Latham, Lloyd, throwing guys in there. It's always been a mix at right guard right now. Just adding new guys, getting Nick Petit back. It's just been a mosh pit, and it's just been like a refresher. It's like, and then you get a new coaches, stuff like that. So, I mean, it's just been from the start. We have a clean slate, and we started building from the foundation and just building up. So, just building that chemistry from day one, starting with a clean slate. I think it's gone well. I think it's going well, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Obviously, it's an opportunity to start. That's what we've always been fighting for this camp. Just trying to take the opportunity to run with it, learn as much as I can, and grow into that spot.
What was kind of your reaction when you heard the news that he had left and then he wasn't coming back?
I mean, it sucks. He was a good teammate. Obviously, he has to handle his own stuff, and obviously, coach can answer more questions on that and whatnot, and he can answer for himself. But yeah, he'll be missed. He was a good room guy, a good morale guy. He's a great player. So yeah, it just sucked hearing that news. But obviously, it is the NFL, and the nature of the beast is next man up, and yeah, I just got to be able to run with that opportunity. So.
How's the focus on guard been going for you? You think as opposed to splitting here, splitting there, and so forth?
Good. I'm feeling really comfortable here at right guard. Learning a lot from coach, having a veteran coach like that to be able to just solidify a role at one spot instead of just bouncing around. It's been very helpful to me this fall camp. So yeah, I have great people around me. I have great faith. God's been good to me. So yeah, just being able to rely on that, rely on my faith, rely on the people around me. I mean, you go through adversity, and that's what makes you who you are. And like I said, I'm striving to make it a good thing, and I hope it does turn into a good thing, and hopefully comes into a good story. So,
anything about Callahan that differentiates him, or Bill Callahan that differentiates him from previous O-line coaches?
He's just been around for so long. I mean, I'm probably wrong. Was it 47 years of coaching or something like that? Like he pulls up clips in this afternoon meetings that from this old tape, like with Brett Favre with the Jets and stuff like that. And he's just showing all these hand placements. Like, he's just been around the game so long that he knows every single situation and where your hands should be, your feet, and your body control, all that stuff. So he's seen it all, and him being able to bestow that wisdom and those techniques onto us has been huge.
I first of all, Dylan Radunz there. Thanks for giving us some time. Zach, I had to hesitate after the interview was over to walk up to him and be like, Dylan, old tape is not 2008 and 9. Okay, guy. All right. Like
that's a long time now. I mean, was that
16 years?
No, 20. Yeah, 18 years, 16 years, 16 years. That's a long time. That film is old enough to drive a car.
Oh God, stop it. I'm not ready to be that old, okay? I'm already feeling my age all the time. I got hurt in bed, Zach, and not like in a good way. Like, I woke up one morning on Sunday morning and I had like a calf strain. I was like Chidobe Awuzie in just waking up with a calf strain and nothing happened. I'm still bothering me today. Okay, so here's the deal. Sadiq Charles, we can talk about this too. Just so first and foremost, before we get into the offensive line, because I have a lot of notes written down on the 2v2 drills that they did. This is Paul Kaharski who said this. And by the way, PK's show coming up on his YouTube page as well in about 30 minutes or so. He looks over at me and we're chatting right after talking to Callahan. And he goes, we basically looked at if DeAndre Hopkins, the number one receiver and prized offensive weapon, gets hurt, you have a top level free agent in the cornerback in Chidobe getting hurt, and an offensive lineman retiring in the first 3 weeks of camp. If this was a Mike Vrabel coach team, the world would be burning to the ground.
But that's because a Mike Vrabel coach team wouldn't have had all the other players to come in after him. It would have
That's
been
fine. That's fine.
Conley.
You can be a smartass if you want to, but
I'm not being a smartass. Is that not true? Is that not what we've always said? Is like, okay, well, if DeAndre Hopkins gets hurt last year, well, you're gonna have Chris Conley and Cody Hollister. It's a terrible example because first off, Mike Vrabel earned that vitriol by the way that he handled the roster with John Robinson.
All right, let me finish the analogy here. Julio Jones gets
terrible
hurt.
Analogy.
I didn't even
heard it on Robbie and Rexard. It was terrible.
Who?
PK was on Robbie and Rexard yesterday.
What analogy did he use?
This Mike Vrabel. If Mike Vrabel, all these players went down.
Well, it's just I mean, I'm not suggesting that there isn't other context, but it's completely true that if he was that if this so Julio Jones gets hurt in 2021, I believe. Also, the year Ty Sambrailo retired, in week 6 or whatever. Also,
and everybody took Vrabel's side, by the way, on the Ty Sambrailo.
Right, and what I'm saying is that it happens. It's actually fairly normal what's going on. Yeah. A player retiring seems odd in the moment, but this is a guy they signed, as a free agent who's like a bottom, sort of a middle tier player. It's not that crazy. And Julio Jones got hurt. That was also the year that Caleb Farley and Bud Dupree started the year on PUP because of the knee injuries. So the point is that this kind of stuff happens. An older receiver gets banged up in camp, a corner gets an injury in camp, and a middle of the pack lineman decides that football's not for him anymore. It happens. But I do think, and I'm not suggesting Vrabel hadn't earned some stuff along the way. Of course he has. But right now, Callahan and Carthon have gotten a complete pass on it, which is fine because it's not that big of a deal. I just wanted to point that out. So you asked about Latham. I thought Latham and Skoronski were a very interesting tandem to watch in 2-on-2 drills. So much like the offense and the quarterback passing the football, everything's sort of a microcosm of where they are. So a couple of different moments. They went up against Rashad Weaver and Sebastian Joseph Day. By the way, Sebastian Joseph Day having quietly one of the better camps of anybody. We're
That's
not talking
someone
about.
that we have yet to talk about on any
He's having a good
Sebastian Joseph Day.
He's been a solid player almost every time he's out there. So Weaver and Day are going up against Latham and Skoronski, and they were working on stunts and switches and crosses and handing guys off, right, in pass protection. And Latham absolutely stones Rashad Weaver on the switch, and Sebastian Joseph Day just torches Peter Skoronski. Then they come back, and I believe it was Arden Key and Khalid Duke, so smaller players. And they do the switch with Skoronski and Latham. Latham and Skoronski completely dominate that one. Big win by the offensive line on that rep. You've got Simmons and Landry coming off the edge against Radunz and MPF, and Radunz and MPF won the rep pretty easily, which I thought was very impressive showing for Radunz and MPF. And Tavondre Sweat bull rushed Lloyd Cushenberry a couple times. Couldn't block him one-on-one. You can block him with two guys. But then there was a play where Latham got completely torched by Shane Ray. Like Shane Ray gave him a leg, took it away, and went right around him and got to the quarterback. So the point is, there's lots of talent. There's really good reps. And then there's just this god-awful rep where you're like, whoa, what was that? And that is, to your point, that is part of the patience and the process that you have to deal with when you have a first-year starting quarterback, a first-year rookie left tackle, all the new pieces. It's just, you're going to have to deal with that kind of stuff. The offensive line got pushed around the first half of that drill. Then they came back and won a bunch of really impressive reps. It's going to be up and down. And I think that's what you should expect from the offensive line. Really good games. When they get a look that they like and a matchup that they really feel comfortable with, they're going to lean on it and they're going to have success because they're talented players. Then there's going to be a game where they go up against somebody who's just better than them and they're going to get torched. And that's the way it's going to be for the offensive.
Well, that's just the way the NFL works, right? I mean, like, no, there's very few offensive lines that don't ever give up a sack, right? I mean, like, we have to understand that there's going to be these kinds of situations. And I'm sure even in Eagles practice, one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, those guys are getting beat, right? I mean, like, they're not winning every rep. But I think what the difference is the way that you're describing these reps and how the results are kind of working back and forth, a couple wins here, a couple losses here.
Yep.
Last year, it was loss, win, loss. Like, I mean,
which by the way,
it was last year.
Which, by the way, Packers fans are learning all about the Andre Dillard experience.
And it wasn't just Andre Dillard, right?
No, I know.
on his side, it was, the guys in the middle. I mean, Peter Skoronski was looking like the best offensive lineman, but Aaron Brewer was getting pushed back. And unfortunately, I don't know where he's at right now in the injury process, but Aaron Brewer apparently got injured and carted off the field yesterday. So I don't know how bad his injury is, but that came from Omar Kelly, and I didn't have time to research further, news about it. But, that's not looking good over there. But it's true, right? I mean, we talked about all summer, Andre Dillard, Aaron Brewer, and NPF. And this year we're kind of just talking about, now that NPF is back, really just the right guard spot. Because NPF is playing and looking better than he ever has in the last two camps. And listen, we'll see what happens. I'm not here to, say this offensive line is fixed. But if it comes down to it, and your worst offensive line, your worst spots on the offensive line are at least on the same side, you can at least do things in game to mitigate that with tight ends or in a jumbo package. If it comes down that your worst spot is Dylan Radunz at right guard, it's a victory. It's a win for the Tennessee Titans offense and the Tennessee Titans fans, and that's a victory. You just don't need 3 to 4 offensive linemen that aren't very good.
So this is for Stoney to start with. One of my favorite reps of this particular drill was Khalid Duke just absolutely out leveraging and bull rushing Jalen Duncan into the in a matter of seconds. It was like it looked like Tavondre Sweat against Aaron Brewer. Is what it looked like. But Jalen Duncan is significantly larger than Khalid Duke.
It's kind of a win-loss for Stoney because we both were Jalen Duncan guys. I don't know if he still is. I'm not anymore.
What happens if Khalid Duke and Chanajukwu go against each other, which I think actually happened? Who does Stoney root for there? Who does he root for?
Yeah.
Here's what that was one I just wanted to point out because it was just one of those where we all were like, whoa, and because he's not a player that you would think would do that move, and I think it's interesting that he's learning that move. And to then break it out against a player who probably has less fundamentals and less confidence in his pass pro, like a player like Jalen Duncan, and to just abuse him in the process, I think is an interesting development for Duke, especially considering Arden Key. We still don't know what's going to happen, but he's going to be out for a chunk of time, at least 6 games, it seems like. The one name, though, I've got written down. I got about 12 reps written down here. The one name that has no L next to him, Tavondre Sweat versus Lloyd Cushenberry, W93. Tavondre Sweat and Sebastian Joseph Day, huge W against Brunskill, and I can't remember who the other guy was with them, but a huge W. 93 with 96 against 70 and 60, huge W next to 93. In 2-on-2 or 1-on-1 drills, he doesn't lose, and they talked a little bit today about how he's seeing the blocking schemes a little bit more, learning how to attack things. In team drills yesterday, Zach, they ran a jet sweep and just didn't even block him. And he didn't know what to do. he just he stands up and nobody touches him. So he just sort of he's like, what, left, right, what do I do? And Boyd was the jet sweep was already way outside, right? So there's one way to attack the interior of the Titans offensive line, or defensive line, which is just get the ball the hell out of the pocket as fast as possible.
Just confuse but
he
refused Tavondre by not blocking him for whatever reason.
You got to pick your poison on those two guys in the interior. And if he is on the field, which is we don't know how many snaps he's going to be capable of playing, but I have not seen Tavondre Sweat lose a rep, I don't think, this week. I mean, he had a blocker on him and reached out and tackled Tony Pollard at the line of scrimmage with one hand. It was just... If he's out there, they're going to be dangerous to stop in the defensive line, and pushing the pocket up the middle, as we talked about, fastest way to get to the quarterback.
Yep. So. Well, I just, I'm not surprised, but I am very happy that this is happening. I mean, it's trending in the right direction. It makes me giddy. And it makes me excited because I've always just been, ever since the Senior Bowl, really, I have just been to the point where I'm just like, can you imagine Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons next to each other? I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 episodes of where one of me, Stoney Easton, or JT have all talked about it in that week. We're just imagining it, and you're like, well, I mean, if they get him, in the second round, and if he falls, at that point it was if he falls into the second round, that's just think about what that could be. And I know that maybe a defensive lineman is not necessarily what they need by the time free agency happens and all this stuff, and it's just like it's like we spoke it into existence, because this is the whole reason you draft Tavondre Sweat, and it's what really, in my opinion, hurt Jarrell Casey for so many years, is not having that other guy.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey Simmons is in his prime. He is motivated, obviously, by comments being made about the media and all this stuff. And now he has a running mate that is near his level of disruption, near his level of threat, where you have to, as an offense, pick your poison. And listen, maybe we look at it and it's like, okay, Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons are getting each double teamed, and here comes Sebastian Joseph Day or Harold Landry coming at the the quarterback. I mean, it's just it's a difficult duo. And it is proving to be a difficult duo for Lloyd Cushenberry, Peter Skoronski, J.C. Latham, whoever you put in front of them. It's a difficult duo. And these aren't from left to the center are not necessarily scrubs. And I would say the right side is probably average. But when you're doing these things to these players, These are the NFL players that Tavondre Sweat's going to do. This ain't Tavondre Sweat doing it against the second string offensive lineman for the Tennessee Titans. It's the first string.
Yep.
And day one, this is what they said he was. This is what they believed he was. This is what I've said he was. This is what you said he was. Mike Herndon, all these guys on the 440 Sports Network that have been pro, Tavondre Sweat, Stoney, Easton, everybody. This is what he has proven to be. And there's no reason, again, got to see it in a game, but there's no reason to think that he won't do it in a game if he's doing it this much in practice.
No, it's truly about the amount of reps. Like if they get 60 defensive snaps in a game, are you out there for 40? Are you out there for 30? Are you out there for 15? Like what's the number? And that's the amount of impact he's going to have. I will say, I'm pretty high on MPF watching him play the last couple of days.
That seems to be the trend.
I'm feeling fairly comfortable that he is clearly your starter, and I think is an improvement over whatever they had last year by a pretty large margin. And I think this is ultimately the takeaway, and I don't think I've been able to say this since we've been doing this show. All 5 positions along the offensive line could be better this year. And that's not something we've been able to say in a long time. And I was talking to B-Hop. I've worked with him for years when we used to work together on Sirius XM, and I was chatting with him because Latham had just gotten torched by Shane Ray, and I said, how many times do you lose in an individual drill? Like how many times did you lose in your career? And again, Brad Hopkins was for those that don't know, a freak of nature at left tackle for a long time in the league for the Titans. And he said in the first 3 years, you lose reps. It happens. But once you sort of establish yourself as a player, once you establish yourself as a starting level NFL tackle, he goes, I lost 1 rep in 9 years after that. Once I became a starter, I never lost a rep in practice. And it was a different game back then, right? Different levels of physicality and toughness and everything. But I thought that was interesting from him. So I think that all 5 positions have a chance to be better this year. And it's certainly something I'm looking forward to. Do you have?
And this is the Bill Callahan effect, right?
Yes.
I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but this is the Bill Callahan effect. I mean, I'm specifically when the team is on offense, I'm specifically going to be looking at 3 positions, 4 players, something like that. I'm going to be looking at Jaquan Jackson. I'm going to be looking at Andrew Rupsich and Dylan Radunz, and I'm going to be looking at NPF and John Ojukwu. So that's 5 players. Everybody else, I'm just like, whatever. It's just gravy at this point. I don't think that they're players that we either have the answers to and we know what they are, or you're not going to get answers from. Like, you're not really going to know, well, is Will Levis the guy, right? Like, I mean, that's not what you're going to find out in preseason.
How about Thomas Odukoya? Can you want to get on that train after Brian Callahan raved about him for a few minutes?
Maybe I watch a few of the tight ends, but to me, those are the guys that have a chance to not just impact the team, but impact the team's future and what they do in the future. Like if Radunz and NPF turn into something, and let's just say they're average or one of them slightly above average, there is a low risk, low signing kind of award for like, okay, we stuck with you guys through your rookie contracts. You guys haven't been that great. I think NPF still has another year, if I'm not mistaken. But, Radunz, okay, we'll extend you, and you don't have to worry about the offensive line, right? I mean, like, when's the last time you've been able to say that?
Huge win.
Like, those are the players that you should be watching. I'm sure it's exciting. I'm not here to say, well, don't watch Calvin Ridley, but like, we know what Calvin Ridley is. So it's like, to me, I'm focusing in on going into this first preseason game on offense, just looking at those 5 players. I want to see those guys.
What was interesting is he raved about Odukoya, and like it's still this European sort of international slot that they don't have to like use a player spot, but he can't really be on the scout team. And then he truck sticks some guy like in the first rep on team where he gets a screen pass and then he just like destroyed a guy. So it's the Odukoya train is out of control. Here's the thing I'm looking forward to on Saturday, honestly. Ed says, by the way, sorry to be all over the place here, but Ed says, is it Pollard or Spears? True 50-50. I think it is. I don't think that they plan on using, and I think honestly it's the same with Chig and Wiley. It is going to be situational dependent. It's going to be need dependent. Pollard and Spears are more of the same player, whereas Chig and Wiley are 2 different guys. But it's a 1A, 1B.
That's also something you're not going to figure out in preseason.
No. I think that's a camp observation. And then listening to Brian, and honestly, I will say, Callahan says he's going to do this throughout the course of the season where he just sits down. It's not allowed to be videotaped, so all the TV reporters are gone. There's no cameras there. He's sitting down in a chair. It's very informal, and his answers are better because it's an informal setting. When everyone's more comfortable, the questions are better and the answers are better. And getting a chance to like sort of see that happen, I know the fans wish they could hear it and actually see it, but it does kind of create a little bit better of a back and forth conversational tone in a press conference because it's not really a press conference. He said, Cedric Gray, he needs to get used to diagnosis, the speed with which you've got to play, especially in the run game in particular, but he loves his instincts and his ability to go find the ball, excited about a game where he's going to get to see more from him in a game. The linebacking rotation, both off the ball and on the edge, outside of Kenneth Murray and Harold Landry, they don't have Garrett Wallow now, who's out for the season with a pec. Not that that's a key piece, but he's out for the season. And Arden Key's out for a while. They got to find warm bodies that can fill some of these slots. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting group of players to watch on Saturdays. Who stands out from this group of guys that are competing? Otis Reese had a couple of really big hits on practice on Wednesday where he filled the hole and like brought it. And he's smaller than the other guys. So it's going to be really interesting. Thomas Rush and Khalid Duke and Shane Ray and the outside linebackers and the off-ball linebackers on Saturday, I think, are something I'm paying close attention to.
Yeah, on defense, I think that's where I think at this point with Caleb Farley going down with injury and supposed to be out for 3 weeks, I think the writing's on the wall. I think we all know how this is going in for Caleb Farley. So then now you are looking at Gabe Judy Lawley. Like, that is a guy that has had a solid camp. He started off really hot, has kind of cooled off. What does he do under the lights? And we talked about this on Football and Other F Words, and I don't know if you've listened to it, Brain, but just in case the listeners have not listened to it, I pulled up the San Francisco 49ers depth chart yesterday because we were talking about, like, offense versus defense. What are you looking for? And we talked about how the San Francisco second string offense is going to tell you a lot about the defensive players that you've heard all summer long. Like your Jarvis Brownlee, your James Williams, your Jalen Harrells, because this offense, here's their starting second string offense. If Ricky Pearsall plays, Ricky Pearsall, Ronnie Bell, Jacob Cowing, Jalen Moore, Spencer Buford, Ben Barch, John Feliciano, Chris Hubbard, Eric Saubert, Joshua Dobbs is the quarterback, and Elijah Mitchell. That's a pretty good second string offense, right? I mean, like that's one of the better second string offenses you could probably put together.
No wonder
they still have Chris Conley out there as a backup, and they have Trent Taylor, and who knows how much play Jawan Jennings will get on top of that. They have Cameron Latu, Logan Thomas as guys back there. Those Isaac Garindo.
These guys are all under contract. How is that even possible?
Yeah. So
no wonder they're trying to trade Brandon Ayuk.
Test for these guys that you're talking about, right? Like we've heard. I've been a big proponent of Jalen Harrell. I've really liked the pick. I thought it was a great value. I thought it was a 5th round player drafted in the 7th round. That's kind of how I put it yesterday. He's had a great camp. He's proven in Callahan's eyes right now that he could be a 3rd down outside linebacker. But Brian Callahan said, now he's got to prove it. Like, now he's got to get on the field and prove it. And this is a good offense to prove it. Like, when you see the defense, let's say the defense performs really well. The second and third string defense performs really well against these offenses because they still have Drake Nugent and Jarrett Kingston on the offensive line for their third string, which is, again, not that bad of an interior duo.
Right.
When you see these guys, you will be able to tell, okay, well, they can step up. And what you saw in camp is the truth about this defense. What you saw from Jarvis Brownlee Jr., if he is lined up against Jacob Cowing, who he owned all through Senior Bowl, or Ronnie Bell, who was a Senior Bowl standout last year. When you see these defensive players, Gabe Judy Lawley, Khalid Duke, Isaiah Aiton, all these guys, Jalen Harrell, James Williams, Cedric Gray, who hopefully Cedric Gray plays, those guys, Matt Jackson, right? When you see these young players, listen, these young players may not provide you a lot of contribution this year, but it's also about the future. Like, we have to understand these performances mean a lot about their future aspirations when other veterans that are on 1-year contracts leave. So it's like very important for Jalen Harrell to be trending in the right direction and not to be Caleb Murphy, who disappeared.
So I think I hope and I would assume that James Williams and Cedric Gray will both play a lot. And if they don't, I don't know football, but they should play a lot. Those guys should play.
Well, Cedric Gray has a shoulder injury, so I don't know if he's playing.
Otis Reese should play a lot. Jalen Harrell, Rashad Weaver, like these guys need to show us what they are. Maybe Weaver less so, but there's also asking them to do different things this year, like especially at the outside linebacker spot where they're asking them to do more in coverage. So they went and handpicked Jalen Harrell late in the draft, albeit, but they went and handpicked him. Rashad Weaver, they clearly said, hey, trim down a little bit because we're going to use you a little bit more in space. That's what he's done, all that length and range. Let's see what it looks like. I just think those are two positions that we don't really know exactly what it's going to look like. I mean, is Chance Campbell still have a chance to make the roster? Like, I don't know.
Otis, people are just kind of overreacting to the depth chart too. Like, I think the depth chart was pretty much what I thought it was going to be because that's just how it works sometimes.
Yeah, I don't. Everybody knows the names, and what we're going to see over the next couple of games is some of these names are going to elevate, and they're going to make the roster, and some of them won't, and that's how this game's going.
And listen, a lot of these guys, these first and second year players, and the undrafted free agents from last year and this year that are fighting for these spots and making these teams, and that says a lot about Rand Carthon with how many of them live up to the expectation or live up to the hype and live and continue this stuff, because it's a lot that says about Rand Carthon too. So it's kind of a trickle down effect. It's not just about 2024. It's about Rand Carthon's prospects as a GM, Rand Carthon, and then the Tennessee Titans prospects for depth pieces.
Yep. Also, the blitz packages, right? Doesn't matter if they're using third-string players. We can still look at how Denard Wilson wants to deploy some of this. Yes, it'll be base and
if he even does blitzes,
it'll be.
I don't know how. Listen, Denard Wilson's a competitive motherfucker. He may be blitzing blitz zero, all out blitz every time. he may get suspended by the NFL.
I was about 5 feet away from him today when they allowed and on it was like on the 5-yard line in red zone. And Tony Pollard kicked it outside on a handoff and got to the pylon and got into the end zone. And he was pissed, yelling at his defense, yelling at his linebackers, yelling at his safeties, get downhill, get to your guy. He's very, very competitive. So we'll see what he does from a scheme standpoint. Probably not a lot, but could be worth watching. Last but not least, Sinkers Beverages, by the way, Football and Other F Words, Hot Read Podcast, Paul Karski Podcast, all the other great shows. Part of the reason I had to leave Titans camp early was I had to come home and sit down and do a long interview with the director of goaltending for the Nashville Predators, Mitch Korn, who has developed 8 Vezina Trophy winners and is now in charge of the department for the Nashville Predators. Really interesting, almost 30-minute conversation with the guy who runs an entire development department for the Predators. That is going to be over on lowerbroadhockey.com. That is our brand new Predators community from 440 Media, so go check it out. You got a chat room in there. It's all great Substack stuff. If you are familiar with Zach's work on Stack in the Inbox, which of course you are, then we've got a Preds one for you as well. That's lowerbroadhockey.com. So go check that out. Kickoff. I got to see it for the first time. It's not the first time they've showed the media their kickoff coverage, but it's so fun to watch because I'm just what are they going to do? And there's a lot of stunting where they pull a guy off the edge and he loops around into a gap, and it's very interesting to watch them do the coverage. It's very interesting to watch them run the drill. I think the goal is you want a high kick for the ball to land in a corner, which is not any different, honestly, than anything else that we've had in kickoff. I think Traylon Burks, Jaquan Jackson, and Tajay Spears have the best bodies and skills to be return men in that situation. But you're also seeing Eric Garror, you're seeing Kyle Phillips, you're seeing Mason Kinsey do that as well. But I think Jackson, Spears, and Burks have a more conducive skill set to that role. So we'll see what that looks like. But really, really interested to see what that looks like in the game as well. The kickoff thing is so interesting to me, and maybe it ends up being Zach. There's a chance it ends up being just really boring, and it just ends up being exactly this. Tackled on the 24, tackled on the 26, tackled on the 24.
Yeah,
it could be very boring in the preseason and then crazy in the regular season, or it might just be boring all year. Either way, my nerdy brain is very interested by how it looks because everyone's like this, and then they're all They watch the ball, and then it's like boom, and then they're off and running, and they hit each other. It's fascinating.
Not to change the subject, but it is changing the subject. Hendon Hooker plays tonight, so I'm kind of excited to watch that. Both Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton play games tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go. Well, not interested in the Joe Milton one, but
well, I'm interested to see. I'm more. It's kind of like I'm interested to see. Is he actually look better than Drake May? And because that's what people are saying.
Don't.
I think that's more of an indictment of Drake May, which Stoney has always maintained that Drake May's not as good as what everybody says he is.
Joe Milton is a perfectly nice human being and a perfectly nice person. And in 7 years of covering him, he has never been good at playing quarterback.
Yes. I agree. But I just think that maybe it says more about Drake May.
No, I know. I got you. Fair enough. I am
excited to watch Hendon Hooker and see what he does.
Yeah, especially since he's been mentoring Jared Goff as the older player in the room. All right, Sinkers Beverages, Football and Other F Words, all the other great shows. Kaharski Show, I believe, is either live right now or going on, so go check that out on his YouTube page as well. Football is here, boys and girls. It's a lot of fun. Yep. It's a lot of fun. And we'll touch on some college stuff too as camps open up and as we get closer to actual football games on Saturdays as well. So going to be a lot of fun. Enjoy the game on Saturday. If you're at your party and you run out of booze, do not get in your car, you knuckleheads. Go to Uber and search for Sinkers Beverages and have that booze delivered directly to your house.
They drive so you can drink.
Enjoy the game, everybody. We will be back on Monday. That is Zach Lyons. I am Braden Gall. Thank you all for listening. Have a good one, everybody.